Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Ronan Nazarene Talks. I'm one of your hosts, Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films.
And I'm another one, Nazareth Prod. From the same,
Yes.
from the same as my name is the channel name. So don't want to
And
confuse you.
yes, it's too early in the morning.
Yeah,
And today we're just going to have a talk about horror films from the 60s to the 90s. So just a kind of overview and then specific films, and hopefully won't overlap too much, even though there's obviously keystone films that we probably will be talking about a little bit more, but just a fun little chat about horror.
yeah. The reason we're doing this now around Halloween is if you hear about films you might work for Halloween, it's good to actually hear them now rather than get them in Halloween. Think, oh, I should have got that for Halloween, because that always happens when someone does a video about Halloween. It's always like, yeah, I wish I'd got that video for Halloween, and it's too late. So here's the early one. You know,
Yes,
we think ahead. We care about our listeners and viewers.
indeed.
Not too much, but a little. You know.
Obviously, this will be where I say I'm not like the biggest horror fan, even though I've got a list probably about 40 films. But I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, horror is really subjective. What scares people or what makes people uncomfortable is obviously
Yeah.
a wide range of things.
Yeah. So we start with the 60s then. We just go forward from 60s onwards. So it's
Yes.
kind of organised. Yeah. Right. So I'll let you choose first from 60s.
Thanks very much. Well, I'm actually just going to start in Japan, which might seem a bit of a strange place to start.
Not for me.
And it's funny because Japan didn't really have that much of a history of horror or what was called horror films. But it really kind of kicked off in the 60s. I mean, Jaijoku is kind of sourced as perhaps one of their first ones, which is a lovely little film about a trip to hell. But then obviously you have Onibaba and Kuroneko
Yeah.
by Shinoda, which
Can I
are
actually move a bit this way towards the centre a bit more? Because there's danger of groups. That's it. Thanks.
no bother. um, yeah, and obviously Kobayashi's Quaidan, which is more of a ghost story. It's less horrific perhaps.
Yeah.
But those four films are really excellent examples.
Yeah. I'd quite on my list, but I kind of suspected you were going to go into the Japanese films, so I never bothered because I thought you were going to go there. So I just thought, well, I'll leave them to him
That's fair enough.
since, because, so what do you like the Japanese films then? Japanese horror films?
I think they do kind of unsettledness, which isn't actually a word,
Yeah.
and atmosphere really well. And again, I think they're pretty good at kind of dreamlike stuff
Yeah.
and kind of dream logic. Obviously, Onibaba and Kuroneko are kind of grounded in reality and have a kind of historical backdrop, but they also have that kind of unnerving, disturbing quality.
Yeah. And Kwaidan's kind of almost like the show-offy one. It's the colour one with all the fake backdrops, but
Yeah,
it doesn't make it too fake. It still feels still grounded in some way,
yeah.
really.
And obviously, with Japanese cinema, the shot composition is always wonderful. The
Yes.
straight lines of the architecture just lend themselves to wonderful framing.
Yeah. So, what about me to go? Do you want me to go through the Hammer ones then? Since you know I want to.
You might as well. We'll have a chat.
Yeah, okay. So I've got Kiss of the Vampire, I've got Plague of the Zombies, I've got Quatermass in the Pit, and I've also got something that's not a Hammer, but it's a Hammer rip-off, just Torture Garden, really. So those are the four. I try to limit myself on Hammer because I could go on Hammer for
Yes, we could just
ever.
make it a Hammer episode.
Yeah, anyone who knows my channel knows I love Hammer. So yeah, I actually kind of lumped it to the interesting ones that might not get as much respect as the Dracula or Frankenstein ones because they're not the most show-offy ones. They're not the ones with the big stars in them. But
Yeah, but for me, they're the more interesting ones, to be honest.
yeah, I like them better as well. I mean, Kiss the Vampire is an atmospheric film that is. It's almost like a vampire toss-up. It's one of those films they made between the Dracula films, Dracula and Dracula Prince of Darkness, when they couldn't get Christopher Lee back to do
Yeah,
Dracula. So they had to do the Bride of Dracula, which is Peter Cushing in it. This one had none of the big stars, but it was an atmosphere. It's a family of vampires, and it was just wonderful atmospheric. I just adore this one. It's there's nothing amazing in the plot. It's just the atmosphere is just so perfectly done. And Plague of the Zombies is basically a political movie where the zombies are like the lower classes who have been exploited by the rich. You know,
yeah, it's been forced to work in a mine.
yeah, it was made by John Gillian, who also did the Reptile the same year, back to back. It's wonderful. Quatermass in the Pit is obviously a Quatermass film. It's an adaptation of a TV show, but it works really well. It's in colour. The TV show is black and white. It's the first Quatermass film in colour. It's wonderfully atmospheric and it's very short. It's only 90 minutes, but it really
Yeah,
works. It really delivers on the promise of the film. And Torture Garden is like an Amicus film, which is like an anthology, but it takes a lot of Hammer actors in it. Basically, it's try to be Hammer, which is why I put it in
yeah,
this sort of thing where it was like, yeah, it was trying to be Hammer, so I put it in because Amicus films are a lot of fun. They're not top level, but they're fun.
yes. Yeah, I had Quatermass in the Pit and Plague of the Zombies on my list. So,
Right.
because hearing Andre Morel say zombies, that's fantastic.
Yes. Andre
Andre
Morel
Morel's
was,
fantastic.
yeah, he was one of the underrated Hammer actors. He was in a lot of films and he never got the respect of that Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee, but he was always really good. And Barbara Shelley was in Quatermass in the Pit as well, and she was always wonderful in her films like Gorgon and all these other Hammer films. So a lot of the better Hammer films were actually the ones that are less well known. And you get a lot of them now in Indicator box sets, you get a lot of the weirder, odder ones.
Yeah,
So it's worth a look. You see Hammer in a film, it looks a bit strange, but it's from the 60s. I mean, as we went into the 70s, it started to do some really weird films that might not work. But a lot of the early 60s weird films were pretty cool.
yes,
As long as you don't mind yellow face or black face or Indian face or whatever. They were not
yes.
very PC.
No, but that was just the time.
Yes. So I'll let you go now.
Um, I was just going to mention a couple of kind of spooky house films, Jack Clayton's The Innocents and The Haunting, which are both from the early 60s, but
Yeah.
they're both wonderful. They're both about showing less. Um, Obviously, remakes of those kind of stories tend to show more, and strangely enough, they're less effective.
Yeah. If you want to see a really terribly done remake, the Haunting 90s
Yes.
version is like what you don't do the remake.
Yeah. I mean, The Haunting's obviously a Robert Wise film, who's one of those guys who did a lot of different films, mostly to a very good standard, but never really gets talked about. The cinematography in The Haunting is just wonderful. The use of sound design, it's one of kind of the earliest examples of really good sound design.
Yeah.
Um, it's wonderful, and The Innocence with Deborah Carr is just awesome.
Yeah. The I've got the Haunting as one of mine as well, but think there was a chance you'd go for that one. But yeah, The Haunting is terrific. I haven't seen Innocence for a long time, to be
Yeah,
honest. It's one of those ones I've always meant to rewatch, but I just never around to it. But it's one of those ones that it keeps on getting remade though. It's always
yeah,
been either remade or it's been kind of influencing something. Like I've heard the new Haunted of Hill House TV show is very much an adaptation of it.
right.
Like the new one is coming out next month, the sequel one.
Yeah. I mean,
So
there's stuff in it that they probably, I don't know whether they would do about as far as the little children being really creepy, and when the little boy kisses Deborah Carr, it's really creepy. It's about stuff in the corner of the frame without being, doing that trope of leaving the frame really open so you know something's going to be there.
yeah,
It doesn't do that as much as other films. There's something in the corner of your eye that you kind of see, but
yeah, that's all it's going to be. You have to try
yeah,
and decipher it yourself. Yeah, yeah. I love
it's
those kind of older films that
yeah,
leave much to imagination.
it's
Um,
a wonderful exercise in subtlety rather than in your face stuff.
yes, the ones I'm going for kind of subtle but also kind of gaudy. My next ones because they're the Roger Corman, Vincent Price collaborations, The Mask of the Red Death, Tomb of Legia, and I've also got Premature Burial, which Ray Milland, not Vincent Price. It's also an
Yeah,
underrated one.
I
I
had
could have
premature
gone,
burial because I absolutely love it.
yeah, I could have gone for some of the other Vincent Price ones, but I thought I'd go for the ones you might not know as well. But Master Red Dead, you have to mention because it's so good. It's
Yes,
so weird and visual, and Nicholas Rowe was DP on it. They really went to town on it. It's just wonderful.
such vivid colours.
Yeah, it's available on Blu-ray, and it's a new Blu-ray coming out apparently.
Yeah, Studio Canal, I think.
Yeah, I've got a Spanish one, but
So
I'll be
to,
getting I'll be getting a new one. But Primitive Burial, Ravenland, it's a nice gothic one where Ravenland's always been played a kind of not so nice person
yes,
who has it coming. And Tomb of Legia is Vincent Price been very romantic. It's one of his most sympathetic turns in a Roger Corman film. Roger Corman was trying to be subtle in some ways, but also he was a showman. So it made this interesting mix of subtle and gaudy at the same time, which I thought was wonderful.
yeah. I
And
still don't think Roger Corman gets enough um, credit and respect, apart from the number of careers they started,
yeah,
plus what he achieved with the money he had. Um, Obviously, famously, he would use the same sets for different films and stuff. He wouldn't let a set go to waste.
yeah. I mean, was what was the one he shot in 4 days? Terror was it 4 days because he's a bit upset and ended up shooting other stuff around about it. And
Yeah,
like
I
five
mean,
different directors are on it.
and his films still have a look, they have a quality, um, and they're a lot more entertaining than films that are shot over a year.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, him and Hammer were both kind of competitors at the time, and they had some similar things in them with the old Dark House stuff, but they were very different. One was very American, one was very British, and it
Yeah.
really made for a very different type of experience.
And
But
the Corman film that I would mention is The Man with X-Ray Eyes, which obviously isn't a gothic film, but it's one of my favourite films of all time. And Second Sight did a really nice release of it fairly recently. That stars Ray Milland as well in one of his favourite roles and one of his best roles. I would highly recommend that.
I've got it in DVD. It's one of the ones I'm waiting for Halloween. I've got a
Yeah,
few Halloween ones picked out. That's one of them, so I should be watching it this Halloween.
yeah.
Um, I seen it years ago, but I can't remember it that well, so I need to watch it again. So, what else do you have? The 60s?
Just a couple of Italians. Obviously, Mario Bava is a big um, influential, and again, very much like Corman, mostly worked on a shoestring. But Black Sunday, which is right at the start of the 60s, with Barbara Steele, that kind of launched Barbara Steele as a horror icon. is just sensational.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that late in BBC Two, and the first like 10 minutes of that is just almost overwhelming.
yeah. Uh, I've got Kill Baby Kill from my Baba. Try to limit to one,
Yeah,
so I went for that one because it creeped me out. That one.
yeah, because again, we could probably do a whole episode on Bava as well.
Yes. Um, yeah. Anybody else from Baba? Any other ones from Baba you want to mention?
Um, well, maybe later in the 70s, but
All
the
right.
horrible Doctor Hitchcock, which isn't Bava, but it's got kind of huge Bava influences, and it's lots of good stuff about necrophilia and stuff like that.
Oh, that's all the fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got two from Polanski in the 60s. I've got Repulsion and Fearless Vampire Killers. I thought I'd try and show two sides of them. Which
yes,
is Repulsion is scary. Repulsion is genuinely scary. Because it's
yes,
about someone going mad and it's in their head and it's this is Polanski when it was really top level Polanski. I think Polanski all the way up to Chinatown, you're gonna get some really good stuff and you could take a chance on him. After Chinatown it got a bit rougher, but it was kind of hit and miss, but this is when he was still at his best, really.
yeah,
And Repulsion was the one that I think made him more than anything, because it was the one that everybody, no one could put in their heads how creepy it was, and how weird it was, and it is something special. And Fearless Vampire Killers is a comedy, it's a send up of hammer, and it's a lot of fun. It's not as funny as it thinks it is, but the atmosphere is wonderful, and there is something about it that's kind of interesting to watch and enjoyable.
yeah. I
You
haven't
know,
seen it for about 35 years.
yeah. I enjoy it when I watch it, but it's not a great film. But it's one to bring up. I think to see. You should try this one for Halloween because it's a nice little underrated one. It's different.
Yes, Catherine Deneuve's fantastic.
Yeah. Do you have any more 60s stuff?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. The only other one I've got is Night of the Living Dead. I thought I'd mention that one is because it's a showstopper, and it's that a whole genre. It is a
Yes,
good film. Still a really good,
yes, it is.
strong film.
Works in a lot of levels. Again, making do with very low budget. Um, it has spawned a genre which it's almost hard to believe it's still so prevalent.
Yeah.
But that's not Romero's fault. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
The thing is,
still disturbing.
I think Romero's original trilogy is still the peak,
Yeah,
really, a lot of ways, because it was everything you could do with the genre in those three films, and every film that came out after it is imitating, really.
yeah.
So,
I'd maybe just mention one more 60s, and it is a little bit left field. But Bergman's Hour of the Wolf is his horror film.
yeah. We haven't got to that one yet in
No,
our,
we haven't got to that in our series, but that's a disturbing film.
yeah.
If
No,
Shame's his action film, Hour of the Wolf's his horror film.
I think Shame's pretty horror, pretty much horror. Yeah. Yeah. Just look to our last video with Shame. It describes a horror for a good 25, 30 minutes.
Yes.
Right. So to the 70s.
Yes. What a glorious decade.
Yeah. So there's a film we need to get all the way first. So I'll just let you. It's a cover photograph. I'll just let you talk about it for a couple of minutes, and I'll just nod a lot.
Well, it's The Beast Must Die from 1974, I believe. Again, this was Amicus. This is one of Amicus's last kind of horror films. It's a film that scared me when I watched it as a child. Obviously, it's not actually that scary, but there's
Yeah.
just so much to love about it, apart from its one big flaw. Um, but it recently got a wonderful indicator release. It's
Yeah.
just so much fun. It's a whodunit with a werewolf. Um, Again, it's just so good. I won't
Yeah.
go into it too much. I've
But
done
it's
reviews on it. Go
yeah,
watch reviews.
many,
It's just
many.
yes, many, far too many.
Yeah. Even
Um,
even as one big flaw adds to its charm.
yeah, um, it's one of my favorite indicator releases, and that's saying something. They did such a good job on it, and hopefully it does get a bit more exposure.
Yeah. And I've got one as well that I will just get over with. House from Japan. It's like Just
Yeah,
get
it was
over
on
with
my
it.
list as well.
It was one of those ones that it's awesome. I've done a video on it. It's weird as hell. Just enjoy it. It's just go and see. You have to see it. It's
Yeah,
insane. It's hard to explain though what it
yeah.
is. It's just
I was
you,
going to say there's no point trying to kind of explain. Just go with it. You're in for an experience.
you went for something that will blow your mind and make you wonder if you're still sane at the end of it. It's
You do get the feeling Takashi Miike must have seen Houseu at some point.
I get the feeling Takashi Miki saw House so many times,
Yes,
so many times. Can I mention another Japanese one from
of
here?
course.
The Vampire Doll and the Bloodthirsty trilogy. Just all of those ones. They're all fun.
Yeah,
And they're based in Japan. Try to be Hammer. I've done a video on those ones too. They are great. They're just so much fun. They're so enjoyable. So you like Hammer, and you wonder what would happen if the Japanese made it. Don't worry, they covered it for you.
yes.
And Arrow put it out in a trilogy, which is fairly inexpensive to buy. You wait for a sale, you should get it for a tenner or something. I'd highly recommend it. Plus, you get a Kim Newman bit talking about them as well because they're all wonderful, and the
I
plots
for
don't matter.
yeah.
Just
I,
the
I,
atmosphere.
I was just
So
going to say I forgot to put it in the list, but it should be on the list because it is.
yeah,
They're so good.
yeah. It's it's something. Yeah, basically the 70s are the weird as hell, crazy movie list part of this video. I think this is the one you most of the films you would talk about will be the ones you watch and go, just am I imagining that? That's what's going on.
Well, let's be honest, cinema was so good in the 70s, regardless of what genre or
Yeah,
where it came from. So,
yeah. So what else we got for us?
I've also got the Asphyx, and the Asylum again, which is another Amicus portmanteau film, but that's a really dark one.
Yeah.
Um, Especially the episode with the army guy taking over the old folks' home.
Oh
That
yeah,
one gets dark, very that's really dark.
yeah, yeah. That's
Those
wonderful.
Amicus portmanteau films are just so much fun.
Yeah, I mean they're hit and miss, but even the bad ones are good.
Yeah,
And when they work, they really work. I mean that old folks
yeah,
home one is just
yeah,
that's just so far gone.
yeah. Because you're thinking, oh, how's this going to go? You obviously know there's going to be a sting in the tail, but wow,
Yeah, yeah. They weren't messing about. So
yes,
yeah, yeah. So the Amicus ones are really enjoyable. I was shocked to point out that Amicus did not all make horror films. They also made the Doug McClure films, and they also made the Doctor Who films with Peter Cushing in the '60s. So it
yes.
wasn't all horror, just mainly
I'm
horror.
I'm waiting for a Warlords of Atlantis special edition to come out.
Yeah, I mean, all hail Doctor.
Yes,
From a
I mean,
certain generation, is
yes,
that
I mean,
you,
obviously in the 70s, black exploitation came about, and there's still a couple of nice little horror entries in the black exploitation. Obviously, Blackula is one of my favourites. You
yeah,
really feel for Blackula, how he's treated.
yeah,
Um, the sequel's not quite as good, but I would also put in JD's Revenge, which is a nice coming back from the dead film too.
yeah. I've got one that's not Blackula, but it's the same genre, same like vampire, early '70s vampire movies called Count Yorker. And there's a
Yes.
ton of Count Yorker. Those two are shot like they were shot in like a zero budget, but it makes them they're really grimy. You do feel like you need to go for a bath after you've seen them because they're so grimy.
Yes.
But they're really enjoyable. They're fun little genre movies from the '70s, and
Yeah, I mean,
this really
obviously,
worked.
Hammer would try and do Dracula AD 1972, but I think Yorga's more successful.
Yorker works better. Although I've got a soft spot for the second
Yeah.
Hammer one, Satanic Rites. It's a bit more bloody and vicious, really, than the first one.
Yeah.
Um, but
I'll just mention a couple of 70s hammers, Blood from the Mummy's Tomb with Andrew Keir and Valerie Leon.
yeah,
Obviously, how much I enjoy it might have something to do with Valerie Leon.
yeah.
Um,
There's also a great line in it. Christopher Wicken wrote this one, and you've also had a great line there. The poor chanting help the earth. They wouldn't know what to do with it. It's a great line.
Yeah. And then arguably my favourite Hammer film, The Devil Rides Out, which is just wonderful.
Um, is that the weird one when the last one's made, or
I'm not
no,
sure.
no,
I
no,
think it's
no,
get.
oh, no, no, no. That's the '60s. That's the Terence Fisher one. You got the wrong decade.
I thought that was the early 70s.
No, '60s.
Oh
Like,
well.
trust me, I know Hammer. Trust me.
Okay. I'll bow to your greater knowledge.
So they made To the Devil or Daughter in the '70s.
Yes,
That
that
was
was
the '70s.
76. Yeah,
Yeah.
77.
So I was wondering, because I was
That's
like,
not as good.
no, this was a decade earlier.
Yeah.
So you confused me. I do have a hammer. I resisted going too far with hammer, but I do have a hammer, which is the Vampire Circus.
Yes.
You
That's
know,
definitely 70s.
yeah, it's really weird. I've already covered a couple of other weird hammer films in my videos, like Captain Kronos, which is good fun as well. But I limited myself though to Vampire Circus because it's really weird, really, really strange.
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to describe it to you. Just go see it if you can. It's made by people who have lost their market or trying anything. And some of these anythings turn up to be brilliant in a weird
Yes.
way. Because Hammer made some bad stuff that they're trying stuff, but they also made some really cool stuff when they're trying things.
Yeah. Because even if stuff doesn't necessarily work, there's always something interesting about it.
Yeah,
Plus, it was the 70s.
yeah. So what else you got?
Back to Bava and Bay of Blood, which again is almost a proto slasher film.
Yeah,
I mean, people have said Friday the 13th is almost not necessarily shot for shot, but obviously was hugely influenced by Bay of Blood.
yeah. I've only seen Bay of Blood once. I've got it the Blu-ray, but I haven't watched it very often. It's not my favourite Bava, but
No,
it's definitely weird and
but
very cynical.
as far as influence, it's another important one, I think.
I've got a Bava from the '70s as well, but it's not that one. It's Lisa and the Devil,
Yes,
which
that's
is
an odd one as well.
that's really odd. That's like what the hell is going on? When I first saw this, I was in film school and I was watching, thinking, this doesn't make any sense. This is weird. And I saw it in Apple Blu-ray years later, and it was still. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. This is weird. It's like at that point I'd given up trying to make sense of it, but it's stuck in my head all those years.
Yeah,
So it must have done something. You also get an Arrow release the film House of Exorcism, which is this, they cut exorcist scenes into the film, which is really strange.
yes, to get on the coattails of another film you might have heard of.
Yeah, it's really odd. So I'd highly recommend that release, Lisa Devil one, because you get two different films from the same source material.
Plus, it's the origin story of how Kojak sucked his lollipops.
I know. So do you want me to get to my other Telly Savalas film on the list?
You might as well,
Horror Express.
of course.
Did you have that one?
No, but I should have now that you say it.
Yeah. Yep. This is Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Telly Savalas. Basically, it's the thing on a train in the early '70s, and it's wonderful. It should not work, but it just works. It was shot in
Yeah,
Spain. It was a co-production. And all these co-productions turned out to be awful, but this one just seemed to work. There's a decent script. Everyone gave it their all. And Peter Cushman's coming here just after the death of his wife, so he was not. He was pretty frail, but he put up some effort and he did a good job. And I guess that's one of the few times you see Christopher Lee having fun in a movie in
yeah.
his character, because normally he gets to play the sterner people, but here he has to show some humour and things. It's quite enjoyable.
And the Arrow release has kind of resurrected it from the darkness of its previous print.
I know because it was hard to see before, but now the thing is, I never saw it until the Arrow release, so it's quite nice to see. I never saw them. I'd heard about them. I saw afterwards. I saw them on YouTube, like how bad they were. But I'd never actually
Yeah,
seen the awful releases.
I'm sure I saw it on TV and it was almost incomprehensible.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Horror Express. Go see it. we didn't tell you any of the twists. We just told you roughly what it was. Go see it.
Yes. I'll bring up a film that's a perfect example of how horror or disturbingness can be completely subjective, and that's Saul Bass's Phase 4
Yeah,
about scientists and ants,
yeah.
which on the surface shouldn't really be disturbing or horrific, but there's a few scenes in that that make my flesh crawl.
Yeah, that was one of the ones I had. I didn't put on my list because I knew it'd be on your list. It was just like, what's the point?
Yeah, 101 Films Black Label recently released a really good version of it, with a lot of Saul Bass's short films as well. So if you're interested in that, it's well worth picking up. Um, yeah, but it's a perfect example of a film that probably shouldn't really be disturbing, but to me, it's really disturbing.
But it's got a lot of striking images to it that really kind of get in your mind,
Yeah,
and it's a really good build up of something going on. It doesn't tell you what's going on. It's just something's wrong. It's
yeah.
just something's off here. So, yep, Phase 4 is terrific. And ignore the plot synopsis or anything. It's just the atmosphere of it,
Yeah.
and um, it is wonderful. I've got one that's also very atmospheric. It's called Let's Scare Jessica's Death.
Haven't seen that one for a long time.
I got it on Amazon Prime. It's really terrific. If you're a Kim Newman fan, you'll know this is one of his favourite films. It's a film he talks about a lot. It's really good. I saw it last year, and it really is atmospheric and strange and weird, creepy. And don't find out anything about it. Just go watch it. Just watch it as with known as little as possible about it. Is my recommendation. It's kind of what the film you thought Carnival Souls was going to be from the build up. Carnival Souls is a film you told it's an amazing film, blah blah blah. It's pretty good, but it's not as good as Reputation, I don't think.
Yeah.
This one is kind of the film that you thought Carnival Souls was going to be. That's the one that delivers. Really, that's my way of describing it.
I'll mention a remake of an absolute classic, but because of who made it, it still works, and that's Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire, which comes right in 1979, I think.
Yeah, I have that one
Um,
as well.
Again, remakes of classics we kind of recoil at, but Herzog, well, because he's Herzog, um, just manages to make it just full of dread. You could argue he improves it in some ways. It's just a beautiful film, and it just has that kind of ghostly decay kind of look. Klaus Kinski's just well, Klaus Kinski. Um,
Yeah,
Bruno Gantz is awesome. It's got a different ending. It's just spectacular.
yeah, it's terrific. And watch the European cut. There's two cuts of it. There's a shorter version, English one, the European German one. And the German one's longer, and the German one's much better because I saw the English version first, which is a good film, but the longer version's much more atmospheric. And you get a lot more the town dying and things like that, and it just works a lot better. So I would definitely say watch the long version. This one.
Yeah, it's one of those films that just has. You can almost smell the dread.
Yep.
Smell the dread.
Smell
Have to get
bread.
a T-shirt with that put on it.
Yeah. But I'm going the exact opposite. I'm going for a campy now with Theatre of Blood, which had Diana
Excellent.
Rigg, who's died last week when we're doing the recording of this, and
Yes.
Vincent Price starring in it. This is basically an actor fakes his own death. He's being an actor. He always gets bad reviews, and he decides to kill the critics, giving bad reviews. Now I was thinking should I go Dr. Fives or should I go this? I thought I just like this one better. This one's just more fun.
Yeah. So the
Yeah, it's
some of the deaths are actually really nasty.
yeah, it's so enjoyable, and Vincent Price is really having a lot of fun. Um, and Daniel Rigg's having a lot of fun as his daughter as well. So everybody's enjoying themselves in this film.
Yeah.
The actors playing the critics are all like character actors. They're all going way over the top, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Everybody's got the right pitch for this film.
And
It
when
just
Vincent
works.
Price does the Hamlet soliloquy, it's just quite moving.
Yeah, yeah. Legal Gentlemen are big fans of this film. They did a commentary on it
Yes.
on their on its release, and they're massive fans. There's another British film I'll mention just now that was released at the same time. There's Deathline, which is Donald Pleasance.
That's a good little film as well.
Yeah, it's released. It's been released on Blu-ray recently from Network, and it's about this cannibal who's on a disused train line in London, that a platform that was no longer used, and there's all about people who've been buried under there years ago, and he's lost the ability to talk, and it's just a grubby little film. It's full of like 70s atmosphere of how horrible 70s London was. How it
Yeah.
wasn't swinging, it was just horrible and cold and wet, and Donald Pleasance plays a cop who's a total bastard, but really enjoyable. So
Yeah,
enjoyable.
you might have to take a shower after watching it because it is
Yeah,
quite filthy.
yeah, but in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, we might as well mention Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
yeah,
Again, as far as influence, I mean, people are still essentially making the same film. Toby Hooper, for me, never got anywhere as close to being as good. Um, because the way it's shot, it's almost like a documentary. Yeah, it's rough as hell and rough around the edges, but you can smell the decay, the atmosphere is just incredible, even from the opening titles with the sound of the flash bulb and what the flash bulb was actually photographing. Um,
yeah.
it's it is one of those films that got the video nasty, but I think it still stands up. A lot of them just don't stand up anymore. Um, but its influence is still being seen today.
Yeah, it is a very good film. I have a Toby Hooper film that's not till the 80s.
I know which one you're going to talk about, I believe. It's on my list as well. Could be wrong, but
Yeah, you never know. But I've got three Italian films from the 70s.
go for it.
I've got Don't Talk to a Duckling,
Love it.
but yeah, Four Flies in Grey Velvet,
Love it.
and Deep Red.
Love it.
So,
Bizarrely, it's not. I do have other Argentos higher than Deep Red. I know Deep Red's kind of seen as his
yeah,
masterpiece, but it's
no,
still obviously still awesome.
yeah. I know it's not my favourite either. My favourite comes later, but these three are. I was trying to think of the 70s Argento, what must choose, and Four Flies in Grey Velvet, I think, just has a killer plot, a killer ending.
Yes.
Because the reason why the killer is doing it to the hero is so brutal, so awful. It's like you can never. It's like I can't believe they invented something that good.
Yeah.
And Deep Red has a great atmospheric story as well, and that's when it all comes together. It makes total sense.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that Deep Red you do have to pay attention to little details, which
Yeah,
is something that I love. Obviously, some Giallo just don't make sense, and it doesn't really matter that they don't make sense. But Deep Red, you have to have a wee eye for detail, which is just wonderful.
yeah. Plus, both of those films are emotional. There's a reason for things happening, and it does affect the protagonist quite brutally. It's not just a puzzle to be solved. There is a drama to it that I think Argento lost as it went on. But on its peak from like the 70s and 80s, there was an emotional core to his stories that
Yeah.
meant it was more than just murders.
I mean, I always have a soft spot for Bird with the crystal plumage, if I can even say
Yeah,
the title, just because that was the first one that I saw, and I
yeah,
just loved the idea of it.
yeah. It's a very good film. The beginning's so good.
Yeah, and again, you could argue that started the whole thing.
Yeah. And even like Cats of Nine Tails, which is one of the weaker ones, still really
Yeah,
strong. You watch it later.
James Franciscus.
Yes. Yeah, but also Don't Touch Our Duckling is a really brutal.
Yeah,
That's so. And it's another one when you went to your bath after you've seen it. You know,
it's arguably my favourite Fulci.
yeah, it's so. And plus, when you find out who the killer is, it's just like, oh god,
And of
he's
course, it
right here.
is it is kind of unusual for Giallo as far as who the victims are.
I know it's just it's horrible the whole way through. It just makes you feel, yeah. throughout, and that's what's good about it. It's just
Yeah,
like it's trying to make you feel that way, and it delivers, and it's like, well, guess that's you can't complain with that. He did what he wanted.
yeah. I mean, obviously, Fulci can be a bit hit and miss, but um, even in his good films, it can be hit and miss. But
This is his
Don't
best one.
Torture a Duckling is just awesome. It's just amazing.
Yep,
It will make your jaw drop.
yep. So you're next. You're up.
Well, you mentioned Night of the Living Dead, so we might as well mention Dawn of the Dead, which for me is my favourite one of the trilogy. I know other people prefer the other film, but again, I think we're living it now through coronavirus. People
Yeah,
are just doing what they remember they should be doing.
yeah.
It's the last thing they remember, and that's normalcy. There's so much going on, works in so many levels. Obviously, there's a super duper box set coming at some point from Second Sight.
Too
Um,
expensive. Just
yeah,
way too.
but again, it's still being remade. It's amazing how the zombie film just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Doesn't die almost. But Dawn of the Dead is a really good example of it.
Well, I remember one's Martin.
Yes,
Martin is wonderful.
which hopefully should be coming out again in a new version.
Yeah, hopefully
Long
less
overdue.
expensive than the
Yes.
Dawn of the Dead. But yeah, Martin is wonderful. My kid who thinks he's a vampire, and it's just about his madness and how religion and how superstition can create anxiety and murder within a person who's a bit oversensitive. Really, it's just beautiful. I've also got another vampire one that's a bit odd, Daughters of Darkness,
Yes.
which is
That's a
very,
fun little film.
yeah, it's very atmospheric, very odd. It's one of the ones I don't want to see much about beyond it's worth seeing because it is the plot's not much, it's all about the atmosphere. But things do happen, but I don't want to see, oh, this happens, that happens. It's like it's about a couple going
Yeah.
to a hotel that's a very atmospheric hotel, and there's another couple there, two women who expect they may have one of them might be a vampire. And that's all I'm saying. But the atmosphere is wonderful, the still's wonderful. It's really good. It's really wonderful to watch. I saw this on TV when I was about 16, and it was like, whoa,
Yes.
you know, because it's something completely different from what you expect. So you can get it in Blu-ray now. I think they're doing a 4K of it, so it's been well remastered. So you have no
Yes.
excuse. Go see it. Right, your turn.
Um, Not sure I have anything else in the 70s apart from just a brief mention of The Omen, which is probably, the most mainstream film, and the stories about the making of the film might be more interesting than the film. Um, but again, that was kind of one of the mainstream entries, and obviously The Exorcist.
Yeah,
But personally, I don't think The Exorcist has aged that well, but that's just me. I've never really
yeah.
been a huge fan of it.
I'm an Exorcist 2 man all the way.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
And we'll get to one of its sequels later.
yes. Um, yeah, I've got a few different ones that are from the 70s that are more mainstream. But yeah, I brought them down, but I didn't expect we'd be talking that much about them. There's Don't Look Now. It's a very good film.
Yeah.
I was never very much into The Woman, though. The Woman, I don't find that kind of stuff scary. There's a Wicker Man, which I thought was nice and creepy and a great ending. But it's a bit overrated, though.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of The Wicker Man, if I'm being honest.
I've always liked it, but that thing is, it always feels like it's always been overrated, a lot overrated.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's good, but there's other films that are better. Same with Don't Look Now. Don't Look Now is a good film, but it's not the be all
Yeah.
and end all. I've got House of Eyes, which I think is a good, solid horror movie. Um, I've got Halloween, which is I love, but I know you're not a big fan of.
No, it's
But
a good film, but
yeah,
I wouldn't go ape crazy in all fours for it.
yeah. I've got Sisters, the Palmer film Sisters.
Yep.
This is a terrific film. And I've got Jaws, which is a horror movie.
Yes.
And it's a terrific one, but it's been so mentioned. I don't want to go into too much. I thought I'd mention it, but I'm trying not to mention too much of the films that are really obvious.
Yeah.
So the 80s now. I'll let you go
Yes.
first.
Well, the 80s, suppose, is kind of more full of more mainstream films and more famous films and the birth of the horror franchise, I
Yeah,
guess. Um, so I might as well start with the biggest one for me anyway, which is The Thing with John
yes.
Carpenter. We'll briefly mention it because both done kind of videos on it, and everybody knows about it and everybody's seen it, but doesn't
Yes.
make it any less fantastic.
Yeah, because I was avoiding this one. I was avoiding Cronenberg films. We just did Cronenberg. It's
Yeah,
like, I did not do any Cronenberg in this list because it's just like, what's the point?
yeah. You got to mention The Thing.
Yeah, Thing is great. I put in The Shining as well as another one you mentioned, but it's
Yeah,
like, there's not much more to see. Everyone knows about it. It's just like one of those, once they mention, then you move on. Because
yeah. Like you say,
it's,
it's like mentioning The Fly, which
yeah, I never, yeah, could have when Cronenberg, yeah, did not follow that.
yeah.
But yeah, it's like one of those ones that's so obvious. So what do you have beyond The Thing then?
Well, obviously, American Werewolf in London, which is another big one,
Yeah,
which is the perfect blend of comedy and scares, which is really hard to do, which has been proven over the years it's hard to do.
yeah,
Um, and for me, the best film in the Halloween series, which is Halloween 3.
watch your mouth.
And
I've
for the people saying Michael Myers isn't in it, he is in it because he's on a television in the garage for like 5 seconds, so
yeah,
technically he's in it.
I've got both these films on my list as well. I knew you were going to go Halloween. Yeah, I put it on my list even though I know you were going to do it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
lovely,
they're
lovely
both.
film.
Yeah, it's a really good. I mean, Halloween 1 and Halloween 3 are my favourite Halloween films. And after that, I don't care, really. The truthful, honest thing is, like, those two I like, the rest I don't care about.
Yeah,
I think Halloween's perfect. I think Halloween 3 is a wonderful little movie that did not get the respect it deserved.
yeah, it suffered because it was called a Halloween film, but
Yeah. I mean, American Werewolf in London was terrific. There was also The Howling, which is also not a terrific little film, but not as good as American Werewolf, though.
yeah,
I think it's a bit clunkier. Um, but I'll go with my zombie film, Day of the Dead, which is my favourite of the series. A lot of
yes,
people prefer the first two, but I like this one better because it's so nihilistic, it's so horrible. The people are so horrible, they deserve to die. They deserve a slow, painful death. And the
yes.
film does punch in the fact that humanity is worthless in this film.
I
It's
prefer the first two, but I still like the third one.
Yeah, it's I like all the Romero zombie films, even the more flawed later ones. I mean, they are more flawed, but it's like
Yeah,
you're still making the films you wanted to make. So, and it still has some creepy elements to them.
yeah.
So,
But the third one certainly is more nihilistic, but it does have some wonderful moments.
maybe Bob the
Yeah,
zombie is great. And you've got the commander who's such an a-hole the whole way through it. He gets ripped apart at the end.
yes.
It's so much fun to see him get it.
And how
But
dangerous checking your calendar can be.
yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, I'll let you go then. I don't want to go on for too long, that one.
Well, again, a film that I really adore despite its flaws and probably spawned one of the worst franchises, and that's Hellraiser from 1987. Um, again, it's perhaps not the complete vision that Clive Barker wanted it to be, but just the ideas that are involved with it. You can say, that it does have flaws, certainly, but unfortunately, as with A Nightmare on Elm Street, the character of Pinhead became more and more like a cartoon character as the series went on. Um, and after probably about the fourth film, it's not really worth watching anything. People might argue after the first one, it's not worth watching anything.
Yeah,
But the ideas within Hellraiser about pushing the boundaries of experience and pleasure are
yeah,
really fascinating. It was different. I think that
Yeah,
was the key. It was kind of different before it just got turned into every other horror franchise.
yeah. Although you are making it sound like every Saturday night for you. That's the way you're
Yes,
describing it. Yeah,
yes. If only.
just one. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'll go for some natural one as well, which is Inferno, which is Argento's Inferno, which is my favourite Argento film. This is the plot isn't that great, but the atmosphere is, and I adore the
Yeah.
atmosphere and the set pieces. It's one big set piece. Doesn't the story doesn't matter, just the atmosphere and the set pieces, and it's wonderful. And I played moments from it on the radio show as well. Some music.
Yeah, I
I
have to. Sorry.
I'll bore you to death in this one quite easily. This film.
Yeah, I was going to say obviously Suspiria gets all the love, but I prefer Inferno as well.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's, like, I don't want to say much about it beyond you should go see it, but don't know much about it. Just go see it and experience it as it is.
Yeah, it
It
has wonderful moments.
yeah, it doesn't really do much for you to know the plot because it's not really that important. It's just like the experience of the imagery and what's going on. So yeah, Stars Inferno.
I'll mention another remake that actually works and I think is better than the original, and that's The Blob from 1988. It's really,
Yeah, I enjoy that one as well. Actually, I
it's
just
really
enjoyed the
the
it's
effects
for
are
fun.
really well done. They're really disturbing, especially what happens to the sheriff. Um, it just works. Yes, the leads perhaps aren't the best leads in the world, um, but it's just such a fun film.
Yeah, it is enjoyable. I haven't even seen the original. I've got the original, but I haven't watched it yet. The remake is a lot of fun. I've been hoping to get it in Blu-ray at some point when it's cheap, but haven't got
Yeah,
it
I've
so
picked
far.
up the Scream Factory version, which is well worth picking up.
Yeah, I've got a fun one here on my list as well, which I'm amazed you haven't mentioned yet, since it's John Steele's wrote it, which is Alligator.
Yes,
You know, first shame, sir, first shame.
I know.
I saw it recently. It's wonderful. It really is so much fun. Robert Foster's a lead, and he's having a blast. Um, and it is just basically an alligator flushed down the toilet from the back is a massive alligator after it's been exposed to radioactive waste, and he just kills lots of people, and no one's safe, and it's just so enjoyable. It's just a riot of gory fun.
Yes, you could easily argue it's Robert Foster's finest hour.
I wouldn't go that far, but I think it's medium cool's probably still his finest hour. Jackie Brown is pretty damn good. He did a
Yeah,
lot of good stuff actually. He had a long career, so he did lots of ups and downs. But this is one of his better films, though.
it certainly has these best balding jokes.
Yeah, he was pretty game for those jokes, wasn't he? I mean, he
Yeah.
never seemed to. He was fine with those. Right, I'll let you go.
Another franchise is Basket Case, which is a lot of fun. They're perhaps not great films. I think I do prefer the second one. The third one's even get musical numbers in it. Um,
I
but
haven't
they are
seen
a
these
lot of fun.
films.
They're a lot
I've
of
brought
fun.
them. I haven't watched them yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I'll watch them at some point. But since you're going for crazy, I'm just going to go crazy. Then I'm going to crazy one. Then a double bill of Toby Hooper from the mid '80s, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and Life Force.
Yes.
I guess you expected these ones.
Yes. I mean, I have to admit, I really don't get Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Um, but I do love Life Force.
And I stress this is the international cut of Life Force, which is longer and it makes a bit more sense. This also seems crazier at the same
A bit
time.
more sense, yeah.
Yeah, a bit more of this. Doesn't make sense, it makes a bit more sense. Life Force is wonderful. Texas Chainsaw 2 is amazing. It's so much fun. It's completely self indulgent. It's one way too long. So all these problems, but I still think it's wonderful. And I don't care with problems. I still really enjoy it. And
That's fair enough.
it's how both of these choices are self-indulgent. Both of them are messes, but I don't care. So they're great fun films.
Yeah, I remember seeing Life Force as a younger boy, and it had quite the effect.
Yes.
you didn't really care about the narrative or what the hell was going on, but it
I,
was,
I don't think anyone knew. I mean, the big rumor was there was a lot of cocaine involved in the set, and it's one of those things you see the final version of the film and thinking, I believe that. Yeah, I definitely believe that. There was whoever was writing this script and directing it probably knew about the drugs because it
yes.
did feel like it was coming from the insane mind, and which is not a criticism.
No,
You know,
it's never boring. Put it that way.
yeah, I know I don't know what drugs are cheap, but I want some of those drugs.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Um, I'll just go to a couple of vampire films that people
okay.
could argue aren't scary, but they're still excellent, and that's The Hunger, which was Tony Scott's debut, and Near Dark, with Catherine Bigelow, or Vampire Cowboys. Near Dark came out at the same time as The Lost Boys, and also The Lost Boys was a big success, and Near Dark was kind of forgotten about because it was actually made for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just so good, starring most of the cast from Aliens, but
Yeah.
just wonderful.
I've got Near Dark as a trilogy of films from the 80s that were kind of horror thrillers. You had Near Dark, you had The Hitcher, and you got Conan Tate.
Yes.
Because Eric Red wrote them all, and they all have that same intense nightmare feel to them. Like you
Yeah.
get into a nightmare and you barely get out alive. So I put them all as one, basically. But Near Dark's terrific. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean this the scene in the bar where they cause havoc is just
yeah, finger licking good.
textbook fantastic.
Yeah, and yeah, Eric Red in the mid '80s was doing some great writing. He was really writing some good stuff, and he directed Golden Tate, and it really worked. And Near Dark was wonderful. The Hunger, less keen on. It's good, but it's not. It's as kind of meandering. I'd class it in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 territory of it's pretty self-indulgent, but if you like it.
Well, it was his first film, so very much like his brother, he is caught with style over substance.
Yeah, I always kind of prefer Tony to Ridley though, in lots of ways. It's not even more fun. His films are more fun. You
Yeah.
know, a bit more brain dead, but a bit more fun.
It's a fine line between fun and brain dead, but
They weren't pretentious though. I mean,
no.
you got stuff like The Last Boy Scout and Crimson Tide, which were enjoyable hokum. It's like give some of that ability to Ridley to go
Yes.
enjoyable hokum route.
Yeah, not take himself so seriously.
Yeah, yeah. So The Hunger is good fun. I mean, it has the infamous lesbian scene in the middle of it. Uh,
Yes.
but
And David Bowie.
yeah, just falling to dust pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm now going to a film that is from an actor you don't love, but you've a lot of his films from, which is The Changeling.
Yes, that was on my list as well. I'm not the biggest George C. Scott fan, as everybody knows, but I have 42 of his films.
Yeah, yeah, Changeling's great. Another one you don't want to see that much about. You have to watch it, and
Yes.
as it and Shining came out around about the same time, and they're both awesome. They're
Yes.
both very different. I mean, Shining's a mega production. The Changeling's a very small film with George C. Scott in a house, but it is wonderful. It is really worth the time watching. But you have to don't don't read up on it. Just go watch it. It's,
Yeah. When it all comes together, it's wonderful.
yeah. So there's a reason why people always bring it up as a good horror film. There is a reason. You know, it's a
Yeah.
very well made film.
And
Um,
again, Second Sight released a nice version of it, which included the soundtrack as well.
yeah, I just got the disc. I didn't buy the soundtrack one.
Yeah,
It's like I've only so much money. you
fair
know,
enough.
you know, I have. I mean, I went to self-indulgent with Flash Gordon, but I never managed to do the Changeling.
Well, I suppose we might as well mention the other big trilogy that started with Video Nasty, and that's The Evil Dead.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, the third one is probably not a horror film or scary, but you have to include it anyway. Um, yeah, the first one is seminal and important and influential. The second one's the more fun one.
yeah. I had the second one before. It was on number two was on my list. I think the first one is terrific, but the second one I think is the one that people love more.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, it's strange, it's just weird. It's kind of where they perfected the whole thing. And the third one is insane, but it's a bit bitty,
Yeah.
really. But I still really enjoyed it. I mean, I saw the third one in the cinema, and it was really fun to watch on the big screen. But
Yeah.
they're all great fun. They're all really enjoyable. So yeah, they're. It's like again, it's hard to describe. It's just like it is kind of almost like you're watching a bit of insanity for 90 minutes. Really,
Yeah, I mean the second one does have a kind of cartoonish quality to it. I think that's what Sam Raimi was kind of going for, but
yeah,
um, it's so much fun. Plus, it's kind of the birth of Bruce Campbell as a star.
yeah. It's also we can watch these enjoy. We can also watch the Evil Dead TV show, which is enjoyable. With
Yeah,
Bruce Campbell. You've also got the remake, which is actually a decent remake.
I
You
haven't
know,
actually seen the remake.
it's it's something different. They try and do their own thing. They don't try and do Evil Dead again. They try and do Evil Dead set up and then do their own thing with a different tone. I mean, when I first saw it, I was judging it pretty by harshly the first time I saw it
Yeah,
because it's a remake of Evil Dead. But when I watched it again, I enjoyed it a lot more because it was much. You know, I could just enjoy it as what it was. So I've got a couple of films that are in that same vein, but they're from Stuart Gordon. It's a reanimated one from Beyond, which are both
yes,
great
both
fun.
good choices.
Yeah, these ones go way too far. They go way, way, way too far. They don't care about taste. With Jeffrey Combs giving way over the top performances, but wonderfully, he's just great. He knows exactly what
That's
the
what he
movie's
does.
in. Yeah, he knows what the movie's in, and he goes for it. Reanimator's a famous one because the reanimating corpse all goes wrong. From Beyond is the one that's less well known because it wasn't Reanimator and people want to reanimate again. It
Yeah,
was something different. But I kind of like From Beyond a little bit more
so
because
that.
there's something weird about it. It's a bit more perfect and strange. And Barbara Compton, who's also in both of them, she gets a lot more to do in this one where she gets to play a person who's really twisted, really
Yes,
she gets to be really sexy, really twisted, and really weird. And I'd happily recommend these films, but do not watch them with family,
no.
or you'll be embarrassed mightily.
And From Beyond is one of the better attempts to get a little bit Lovecraftian. It's
Yeah, it's harder to do than people think.
yeah,
Yeah. It's everyone thinks put a few monsters on that's Lovecraftian. It's not. It's something else.
no.
It's a different atmosphere. So yep, From Beyond and the animators are great fun. So what else should we go up for? What other depravity do you have for us?
I've got a film from another series I haven't seen a lot of, which is the second Phantasm film.
I've got that one as
Um,
well. I thought that was my little one. No one else would you would get. But yeah,
the flying spiky balls.
yeah,
Um, the first one is a nice little film, but I think the second one is a better version of it. I haven't
yeah.
actually seen the other sequels.
Can you believe it? I've got the box set from Arrow
I
with
can't believe it.
with the little spiky thing in the box.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
I've
mean,
got
I've
that.
thought about it. Obviously, there's a kind of more standard edition now, out, and I've still thought about picking that up as well, even though the sequels aren't supposed to be that great. But
Actually,
I think
three
the
and
second
four,
one has a really nice atmosphere.
3 and 4 are fun. They're,
Yeah,
they're fun. They're lower budget, but they're fun. The fifth one I couldn't really get through because it's a different director and there was missing. It was so long after the rest of them that it was
yeah.
missing what was there. But
But I think the second one's a nice little film. It's got lots of atmosphere and it's creepy.
yeah, there's a different actor playing a different character. Jamie Grows in this one. He's
Yeah,
really enjoyable, and the whole thing is just enjoyable. It's wacky. It's weird. You can't work out what the hell's going on most of the time, but it doesn't matter.
yeah,
And you've got an ice cream guy who's your action hero, a guy who sells ice cream as your action hero guy. That's
yes. You can
worth
tell
something.
kind of film that is.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a fun movie as well, which is kind of in that same idea, which is Monster Squad,
Yes.
which is Fred Decker directed it. Him and Shane Black wrote it. Shane Black from all those action movies wrote this one as well, and it is kind of. Did you have that one as well?
No, I'd completely forgotten about that one.
Uh, but yeah, it's a really enjoyable monster movie with kids. It's a kids movie. It's the film Goonies wishes it was. The
Yes.
film everyone says Goonies is. This the film.
Yeah, I've
Really?
never really got Goonies, to be honest.
Yeah. Basically, fuck Goonies. Really. Just this is the film. If you want a kids film, this is it. This is the one you should see.
Yes.
So it's again, it's just a bunch of kids fighting monsters. It's all Universal monsters. So you get werewolf, Dracula, Frankenstein. So it's old fashioned, but it's also got kids who are modern and grown up, and who have and it is in the 80s films, so they say stuff that nowadays you wouldn't get away with.
Yes.
But it was the 80s. What can you do? The difference of human 80s.
Yes.
So what else do you have?
One of Romero's most underrated and kind of forgotten about, which is Monkey Shines,
I have that one as well.
which I had seen years and years and years and years ago, and only rewatched it when Eureka released it on a nice Blu-ray, full of interesting, disturbing ideas, um, and it was kind of forgotten about.
Yeah, that scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. When I saw it first time, the suspense of the monkey was actually I thought it was really creepy.
Yeah.
And I really like it still. It's a really well made film. It's a bit underrated because it's not trying to be the biggest movie ever. It's just a small movie, a guy who's paralyzed from the neck down. So he can't escape the monkey, so he's limited, and that makes it much scarier,
Yeah.
really. And there's a link to him, the monkey, as well, which is weird and odd and makes for really disturbing moments.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful film. It's highly recommended. Plus, you get some sympathetic characters played by actors who are a bit better known now than they were then.
Yes.
It's fun. I've got two John Carpenter movies from the 80s. I've got The Fog, I think it was 1980,
Yes.
and Prince of Darkness,
Yes.
which is an underrated film, very underrated film. Um, the Fog is well known. The Fog's got a nice atmosphere. The plot's not so great, but the atmosphere and the characters are fun. They're enjoyable to be around, and so it makes up for the fact there's too many zombies in the Fog, which I don't think
Yeah.
works as well as the rest of it. But the atmosphere is great, and you get to see a lot of John Carpenter character actors in this one. It's almost like a cameo. Most of the actors work with him on this film. And Prince of Darkness is Donald Pleasance versus the Devil using quantum physics. So it's very Quatermassy
Yes.
and it's very enjoyable. The two lead actors who play the romantics aren't that good, but everything else works.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
think that's kind of the flaw in it. The casting's not great for a few of the actors, but there's still interesting ideas and interesting things going on. And
yeah, I
again,
mean,
it's got really good atmosphere.
yeah, it's flawed. It's a lesser Carpenter film, but still a good Carpenter film, even though there's some issues,
Yep.
really. So yeah. So do you have any more weighty stuff, or are we?
I've got a couple more. One is Society, which is one of my favorite films. Again, I think I first saw it either in Moviedrome or getting out of the video shop. It's one of those films that starts off being something, and you think you know what it's going to be, and then it takes a sharp left turn in the final sequences. It
Yeah,
starts off as a Beverly Hills 90210 episode,
yeah,
um, and then gets darker and weirder. If you realise Brian Yuzna is involved, then you kind of know where it's going to go.
yeah. Yeah, it has actors who are probably in those shows.
Yes,
And it was it's like a Starship Troopers element of it. You're not quite sure the actors know they're in a satire.
yes, But
You
it's a
know,
wonderful satire about
yeah,
class in America.
yep. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. It's very, very twisted and weird. And it's a film for years you can't find. And now
Yeah.
they've been a re-release of it, so it's quite nice to get a proper release from Arrow. But yeah, it was one of those films that I saw when it was released, and then it was hard to find for years.
Yeah. It's still, the last few scenes are still jaw dropping.
Yeah, they really go for it. And it's weird.
And the last one was one I've literally just watched recently, which is the TV version of The Woman in Black, which was written by Nigel Neal
Yeah,
of Quatermass fame. And it's really good. It was actually so good that I then watched the commentary with Kim Newman and Mark Gatiss straight
yeah,
after, which is awesome as well. Obviously, it was remade recently with Daniel Radcliffe.
yeah.
Um,
I haven't seen either version.
but this one is really, really good.
So yeah, I need to watch it, but yeah, I really want to
Yeah.
see it, but at the moment I'm saving up for something, so I'm avoiding spending. But it's on my wish list for later. I've got a
It,
few. Sorry,
sorry, I was just going to say it's really good, and the commentary is just really a lot of fun as well.
yeah, yeah. I've got three more. I've got Stage Fright, which is I think it's a Dario Argento produced film by Michael Suave. It's his first
Yes,
film. It's about actors who are rehearsing a play, and there's a psychopath killing them all in a mask, this blood mask. It's really enjoyable. It
yes,
takes what could be a slasher movie and makes it a lot more interesting. And I mean, it is really still over substance, but there's a lot of good style in it. It's really enjoyable. We've got the stuff by Larry Cohen,
of
which is
course.
satire.
That's excellent.
Mike Moriarty is about this stuff. It's food that people eat and destroys you from inside. It's a satire of what what you eat, and all the kind of health foods and how you're. A lot
Yep,
of them are more corrupt and they're actually alien invasion, which is just a lot of fun.
still relevant,
Yeah, it can easily be remade
more
nowadays.
relevant.
Yeah, it's you can wish some young satirical director would bring it up to modern age, because I think it's something that you could do well if you got the right talent again.
Yeah, of
And you go to Mr. Vampire, which is the
course.
kung fu vampire film. It's really trashy and stupid, but really enjoyable. I've nothing else to say about it. It's just trashy and dumb,
Yeah, I
but it's
remember
fun.
seeing that. I think Channel 4 had a Kung Fu season or Hong Kong horror season back in the 80s, late night. And it's stuck with me because you always love Mr. Vampire.
Yeah, it's really. I only saw it recently, but it was really enjoyable. I want to see the other ones now, even though I heard them not that good.
Yeah,
For the first one.
vampires who hop, come on.
Yeah,
Again, it's got the really good mix of atmosphere with comedy because it's also very funny,
yeah. It's
which is
I,
hard to do.
yeah, and the characters are really stupid. Some of the characters are really dumb, which makes it probably funnier because they're it's like, what are you doing?
So as we move on to the 90s, I'm just going to mention a film that was made in 1990. You know, it looks like it's from the 80s due to the mullets. And that's The Ambulance with Eric Roberts and James Earl
Oh,
Jones.
yes,
Again, there's another Larry Cohen film, um, but it's a lot of fun about an ambulance kidnapping people for strange experiments. Um, it's just wonderful. It's a lot of fun. Cheesy as hell. Probably belongs in the 80s, but it was made in 1990.
yeah. I think we should go to the obvious one now that we'll probably both got, which is an Exorcist sequel, Exorcist 3,
Yes.
because basically go over with.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Exorcist 3, change that immediately.
Yes. Now, I've done two different videos in this. I've done Exorcist series videos, which is Exorcist 3. Then I did a video about Exorcist, the version I haven't seen, Exorcist 3 version, the kind of director's cut one. So I've done two different videos on Exorcist 3. So that's quite a bit from me on this one. It's it's a wonderful film. Both
Yeah,
versions.
despite its flaws and troubled history, which again, if you pick up the Arrow Blu-ray, you'll hear all about it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's still amazing. It still is genuinely creepy.
Yeah.
It has one of the greatest jump scares of all time. The relationship between George C. Scott and his priest friend is just one of the greatest in cinema history. It's got a
Yeah,
great carp story. It's got
Brad
everything.
Dourif. Brad Dourif
Yeah, Brad Dourif. Yeah,
as he provides mostly creepy
yeah,
as a psycho. He's the villain. He's scarier than anything you'd ever get in The Exorcist. He's like, if you want to know what the devil was, The Exorcist, just imagine Brad Dourif, this film,
yeah.
and you get an idea.
But it's the little details that just kind of build the atmosphere of dread. Again, it's a film a bit like Michael Mann's Manhunter, which you think is a lot more violent than it actually is, because you
Yeah,
just hear about things rather than seeing them, but your imagination makes you think that you have actually seen these things.
yeah, yeah. It is wonderful, it is creepy, and the original version is also very creepy. There's lots of weird moments, and even the kind of comedy moments add to the creepiness as well,
Yeah.
because they add to certain oddities. And George C. Scott's so good in that as well. He's trying to
Yes.
hold together. He's a guy who doesn't believe. He's trying to make sense of the world. So George C. Scott didn't do many horror movies, but he did good horror movies.
Yeah.
When he came in, he did them. You know, I should also mention the fact he was in a good Christmas Carol movie from the 80s. It was
Yes.
also a creepy, scary movie. So we want to go a Christmas Carol one when it comes to Christmas. Get a George C. Scott one because that's the best one.
Yeah. I
I'd
mean,
say
it
the
is.
Muppets one.
Yes. It is obviously less of an exorcism film. It's more of a serial killer film and an existential dread film. Obviously, the name kind of changed depending on what mood the studio was in.
Yeah,
Um, and obviously, in one version, they do kind of cram an exorcism in.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened, this one happened again with Post Reader's version, which was they didn't like it was subtle, and the studio went mental and said, "This is not good. We want something different." And in this version, this time they changed it all. In the Shredder version, they actually reshot it all, and it's um, it's really weird. The Exorcist, I prefer Exorcist sequels to The Exorcist. Really,
yeah,
they're more interesting.
yeah.
Even the disastrous ones tend more interesting. Um, I've got another Brad Dourif film
Do
called
you?
Grim Prairie Tales.
Of course.
I just thought you would have.
I had forgotten about it. It took me so long to find it in German DVD, but finally I had it.
Yeah, I've only seen it once. I saw it in the 90s. It's an anthology film with telling tales around a campfire. James L. Jones and Brad Dourif. It's really good. It's really terrific.
Yes.
And I would leave it to you to see. I don't want to say much about it. Just go see it. It is a very good film and very underrated.
Yeah. Yeah, James L. Jones gives a an unusually non James L. Jones performance. He usually doesn't play characters like he plays in this one.
Yeah, because he's probably asked to be James L. Jones all the time.
Yeah,
That's it. Just do you.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'll go with another Clive Barker adaptation of Candyman, which again is the early 90s, but has spawned sequels. Is there not a remake coming, or has
Yeah,
already been done?
I've got Candyman, and I've also got the other Clive Barker adaptations of Nightbreed and Lords of Illusions.
Yes.
So I might want to talk about all of them.
Yeah.
Because we're,
I mean, again, with Clive Barker, you could argue that doesn't quite translate completely to the screen, just because these books are usually so rich with ideas. Um, but some Clive Barker is always better than no Clive Barker.
yeah,
And Candyman again is more is about more than just kind of urban legends. Um, Tony Todd gives a wonderful central performance that he's almost been repeating quite a lot. It's a really
yeah.
good film.
Bernard Rose directed it, and it's
Yeah.
also creepy because it's about madness. Because this could all be happening in Virginia Madsen's head, and she's really
Yes.
good in this film as well. And it is a case of, is she seeing Candyman or is she going mad? It's kind of like the Shining thing where
Yeah.
both interpretations could be happening. And that's what's creepy about it because you don't know. You're kind of, it could all be in your head. It could all be
Yeah.
her going crazy.
The origin story of Candyman is really disturbing and nasty as well.
Yeah, it is a class act. I just don't think that the new version's going to be half as good as this one. This it's one of those ones. Why bother? It's been done
Yeah,
perfect.
it's got a
Um,
lot of atmosphere, and it's really beautifully done.
yeah, I think even Clive Barker thinks this is the best Clive Barker film he would direct it. I think I've heard that he rates this one really highly. There was at Nightbreed, which is a bit of a mess, but there has been a director's cut, which is a much better version.
Yes.
That puts stuff back in, it makes more sense, and there's less padding. And you actually have scenes in it that if you read the book, you knew straight from the start. It's like, why would they cut out all the
Yeah.
character stuff? Um,
Plus, it's a wonderful David Cronenberg performance.
yeah. But the weird thing with this one is when you actually see the director's cut, the lead actor is actually a lot better in it as well, because actually the scenes that make the characters actually make
Yeah.
sense. Because before, the lead actor seemed pretty stiff, and then we see the full version, it's like, this makes sense now, like why
Yeah.
he's doing things. Just
It's always baffling when studios cut things down and then, strangely enough, they don't do as well, and then they go, "Why did this not work?"
yeah, it's also the fact that I think the leading lady's a lot better than the leading guy in
Yeah.
both versions. But she's a more empathetic character you like better. But it's a really strong film. It's very interesting, and but the director's cut's better. And Lord of Illusions is underrated.
Yeah, I watched that again fairly recently. Yes,
It's
there's problems with it, but again, it's a lot of fun.
yeah, it's enjoyable. Clive Barker is such an eccentric person as a writer and artist that he's never going to do something that's purely perfect. But you might as well enjoy what he's doing, gives you
Yeah.
because it may be a bit messy, but so what? Right. I'm going to go for something else that's a bit messy, but so what? Which is In the Mouth of Madness.
Yes, that's really underrated.
Yeah, this is. I would say this is John Carpenter's last great film. Really,
Yeah, that's fair.
this is his last. This was his big hurrah. If he'd stopped after this one, it would have been a perfect career, pretty much,
Yeah.
apart from a few little flawed things. But this is wonderful. Stan Neill plays a guy who's a total dick in the beginning of the film, which is funny because he's enjoying himself. You tell he's an actor enjoying himself, playing someone who's horrible,
Yes.
and he's this insurance guy who sniffs out false claims, and he's a bit smug about it. And he's asked to find Sutter Kane, who's a Stephen King type novelist who's disappeared. And they end up going to this mad area that's very much the fictionalized version of Sutter Kane. So Sam Neill thinks it's all a con because he's cynical, and
Yeah.
slowly it becomes more and more creepy as the film goes on, and it gets more and more about what he's seeing. This is the first, like, I mean, this was after Stuart Gordon. This is the next Lovecraftian type of film.
Yeah, this is
There's more
arguably the
serious.
best Lovecraftian adaptation, I think, even though it's not directly an adaptation.
Yeah, but it's got respect for Lovecraft. It's got the monsters, but it's still all the madness as well, and it's got
Yeah.
some wonderful moments. There's one or two weak performances in the sport. Okay, it doesn't matter though because it really delivers.
Yeah.
It's and it's
Sam Neill was wonderful in it.
yeah. Sorry about the balls. Punch to get the balls,
Yes.
and he calls it the landlady an old bitch. Who's this
Yeah.
sweet old lady. It's like he's so obnoxious throughout the first half of the film. It's hilarious. So yeah, in the Mouth of Madness, definitely see it. It's very underrated, and it's on Blu-ray now, so we can give no excuse.
Yes.
So what do you have next?
Again, it's probably not particularly scary, but just really well done, and that's Kronos, Guillermo del Toro's
I bet that's
debut, which
yeah,
again is a wonderful, different take on the vampire mythos, with characters you actually care about, which doesn't always happen in horror films or vampire films. Um, Again, it's more the horror of ideas, and family rather than jump scares and all of that. It's really classy, and it's a really well done first film.
yeah. I adore Kronos. I mean, I like him more than some of his later films. And this is a, it's like he's less self-consciousness, but he's a bit rougher, but
Yeah.
he's putting everything into it. Well, my favourite Totoro is actually Devil's Backbone.
Yeah, I was actually going to say my favourite still was Backbone as well.
Yeah, but I really like some of his later films as well. I really like Del Toro. I think some of his earlier films are simpler.
Yeah, I mean, The Devil's Backbone's a beautifully elegant ghost story with the same lead actor, Federico Lippi,
Yeah,
who's just so good in both films.
yeah. Although I do adore Pacific Rim for different reasons.
Yes, I know you do. It's
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, Cronus is wonderful. I'm going to go for a triple bill of Peter Jackson. I'm not quite sure when the first one came out, but Bad Taste, Brain Dead, and The Frighteners, which are fun early Peter Jackson films.
yes,
Because Bad Taste, I think, was shot in the late 80s, but I believe it was released till the 90s. It's kind of the
yeah,
borderline of one
it's
of the movies. I
right
think it may
in
have hit a few
cusp. Yeah.
festivals, but I didn't really get released until the 90s. Um, the Bad Taste is a lot of fun. I remember seeing this when it first came out. I was a student, and me and my friends would go to the video shop and watch it 4 times before we took it back.
Yes,
Over 24 hours.
it's quite an
But
experience.
yeah, it's insane. It's only an hour and a half long, and it's utterly nuts. And it lives up to the title Bad Taste. It's an alien invasion in a New Zealand town. The aliens are all grotesque creatures. They're made from with no money, and it's got a joy of filmmaking that was sadly lost and stuff like the Hobbits, those Hobbit
Yes,
movies. It's like I'd much rather watch Bad Taste
yeah,
than
it's
the
hard to
Hobbit.
believe it's the same guy.
Yeah, Brain Dead is a zombie movie. There's also a family movie about a son trying to get away from his mother who's domineering.
Yes,
But it's also got a kung fu priest who kicks ass the Lord. I actually saw this one in one of those midnight screenings where it was a quadruple bill. You watch all night. This is one of the movies, and
yeah,
when that come up, there's a massive cheer. I could just ask for the Lord.
yes,
It's um, it's a wonderful film. It's really self-indulgent, but it goes so far over the top that I don't think Peter Jackson could really top it after that. It was just like have to do
no,
something else.
yeah,
The Frighteners is a comedy, a horror comedy. It's enjoyable. It's not quite as insane as the first two, but it's nicely underrated film that's got a lot of charm to it.
yes. One of Michael J. Fox's best turns, I think.
Yep. So um, those are a nice little trilogy from Peter Jackson. Back when he's good.
Yes. Well, we have a little chat about J horror in the 90s, which kind of exploded. Um,
Yeah. See,
so,
I'm much more confident with G horror in the 2000s. Actually, 90s I don't know as much. Really.
well, I mean, it's right at the end, but Audition, which technically isn't a horror film,
2000 I checked.
is that
2000.
not 1999?
2000. I did my list and I checked. It was 2000.
I think I saw it in 1999. That's
Maybe
horrible.
maybe a festival or
Um,
something. Or allow it for could you put it up?
yes, I mean, it's not a horror film, but for certain members of the audience, it was a horror film.
Yeah.
Um, when it was first shown, lots of people walked out, but I'm sure that happens to Takashi Miike
Yeah.
all the time.
This covers.
It's another example of a film that, for three quarters of it, is going one way, and then it takes a sharp turn somewhere else
Yeah.
to great effect. It was kind of his breakthrough film, even though he'd probably made about 300 films by that time anyway. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, one scene, never
It makes
forgotten.
your 100 films that week.
Yes,
Did I stop you there?
yes. What else do you
Alright.
have?
Oh, I sorry, I thought you were going to say something else.
Nope.
Or G was that on the G horror?
Yes.
Oh, well, I thought you more. Sorry. A Ringu G horror was a good, enjoyable film.
Yes, I was going to mention Ring, which was 98.
Okay, I think we're going to mention more G horror. Mention G horror. What else have we got in G horror?
Well, Ring and Dark Water, but I think Dark Water was actually 2000s, now that I think about it.
It was.
But
Uh,
Ring was 98, which again is one of those films that the first time you see it leaves quite an impression.
Yeah, it's far superior to the remake for Spirited and Tales Come After. Although I have a soft spot for Ring Zero Birthday. I like that one as well. That's a very nice story.
Yeah, I've still to rewatch the second and third one
Yeah,
and the Arrow box set.
yeah. It was a Grudge, 2009, I believe it was 2000s.
Yeah, they're all kind of late 90s, early 2000s, I think.
I like the Grudge. A lot of the ones I remember for the Iron things were all 2000s. So it's kind of hard because it kind of moved from the 90s to 2000s over a period. It's hard to tell what came when.
Yeah, because stuff like Pulse is just like 2000, 2001. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of difficult to tell. Um, so what have I got? 20. I've got the Dark Half. John Barrow's the Dark Half. It's
yeah,
underrated.
yeah, it's another underrated, forgotten about Romero.
Yeah, I mean, Timothy Hutton as a guy who's an author who's got a pseudonym and goes back to life and hunts him down because he doesn't want to die. And it's a nice look at madness and how crazy what writers are and how crazy people can be. There's a guy subconscious coming back to haunt him. And it's just a fun movie because it's kind of a crime movie, also a horror movie. It's a supernatural and a crime movie at the same time, which is enjoyable to watch. And it's very underrated.
Yeah, it's when you give birth to characters and ideas which are part of you, and
Yeah,
just what happens if it actually comes back to haunt you.
yeah, yes.
I've got another vampire film from the
I,
90s that
I was waiting
isn't
for that.
isn't really a vampire film. That's Abel Ferreira's Addiction.
Yeah, I was thinking if we just choose addiction next time, I'm probably using it myself. I've had it for
Um,
ages, waiting to use it. I was like, I was going to use it at some point, surely.
which again, it's not your typical vampire film, but it's Abel Ferreira doing a vampire film. It's still disturbing because it's shot in black and white. The blood actually looks worse than if it was in color, I think,
Yeah,
because there is a scene where there's lots of it. It's more philosophical. Christopher Walken has a great cameo.
yeah.
He's in it for a couple of scenes. Lily
But he
Taylor's fantastic.
dominates it though, because
Yeah,
he's there. It feels like he's like,
yeah, he's the wizened veteran who knows all about it.
he's basically the Dracula of the film that
Yeah,
everyone talks about a lot, but he's only there for like 10 minutes, really.
yeah. Lily Taylor's great as the protagonist. There's lots of familiar Ferreira faces.
Yeah.
He shot this pretty much at the same time as The Funeral, which really needs a Blu-ray release, by the way.
I know, Funeral's amazing.
Um, it's criminal, pardon the pun, that it's not. But the addiction doesn't outstay its welcome. It's really underrated. Um, it's disturbing again for more of the ideas that are discussed, but there is black blood for everybody for
It's really dark.
warhounds.
It's
Yeah,
pretty gruesome. I've got a walking film and a fair film as well that are beyond this. I've
go
got The
for it.
Prophecy.
Yes, which I love.
Yeah, I'm not sure it counts as horror fantasy,
Oh,
but
it's
it's
just
enjoyable.
glorious.
It's enjoyable walking as a fallen angel, walking around trying to find the soul of a war criminal, because he wants to attack heaven. It's just great. It's just Eric Stoltz is in it as another angel. You've got Viggo Mortensen as Satan himself.
Yeah, Elias
Uh,
Koteas is in it.
I know it's just
Virginia
an
Madsen again. I mean, it's an amazing cast.
yeah, it's just an amazing film. It's so good.
I mean, Walken plays the Angel of Death, but yeah, actually, there's a moment in the film where you feel sorry for him, and it's like
Yeah,
only Christopher Walken could do that.
yeah. God doesn't talk to me anymore.
Yeah, you
Uh,
actually feel bad for him.
yeah, and we've also got the Body Snatchers, the Even Fair Body Snatchers movie, which is
This is
very good.
underrated.
Yeah, it's like some of the creepiest moments. Just set in a military base where you can't tell who's right and who's wrong because they're all in uniform, so it makes it even worse. And there's really creepy scenes. And Meg Tilly as the wife of the of the dad who gets possessed first, and she's creepy as hell. As where you gonna go? Where you gonna hide? There's nowhere to go, and it's like just creepy. And there's a creepy bit at the end where one of them turns, and it's not who you expect, and it's pretty brutal. It involves a helicopter that's
Yes.
really. I don't want to give it away, but it's a lot better film than its good reputation suggests. Really.
Yeah.
And Forrest Whitaker shows up for 10 minutes, and he's great in it. He's a great scene that sums up the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I really need to do an Abel Ferreira retrospective at some point.
I know. The more you talk about it, the more you realise how much he's actually done.
Yeah. I mean, he's from the early 80s and he's still doing it. So.
Yeah. So what else you got then?
I don't think I've actually got anything else in the 90s.
Oh,
I'm
right.
sure there's stuff I've forgotten about, which you'll remind me of.
I have a bunch of them still. Not that many, but I've got some. But Tremors, which is a sci-fi movie, is all horror.
Oh,
it's a borderline piece. Just
Tremors is brilliant.
Yeah, go and watch and enjoy it. The sequels are fun. They're not as good, but they're fun. The direct-to-video ones are still enjoyable. Sort of nonsense.
I mean, Tremors is one of those films that's almost a blueprint for how to do that kind of film.
Yeah, I know. This is wonderful. I mean, there's Arachnophobia as well, which wasn't on my list, but that's another good one. Yeah. That type. All the family can watch it. I've got Dust Devil, Richard Stanley's Dust Devil, which is a nice little serial killer movie set in South Africa. All the myth and things like that. It's hard to get hold of, but now it's becoming more available. So I need to rebuy it in Blu-ray, but I'm looking forward to that one. I've got The Faculty, which is a fun little horror movie, early 90s. It's not very deep, but it's enjoyable. It's a fun movie to put on once in a while, and you'll have some fun with it. You have a lot of actors who became much bigger after it. That were, you've got some character actors playing the teachers who are possessed, like Piper Laurie and all the rest of it, and it is a lot of fun. We've got Ravenous.
Oh yeah, that's my favourite cannibal film, probably.
Yeah, it's so good. Robert Carlyle and Guy Pearce, and cannibalism is a metaphor for capitalism and greed and evil. It's so enjoyable.
Yeah, I did a random review on that a while ago.
Yeah, I saw that in the cinema in a triple bill with Eyes Wide Shut and 13th Warrior. That was a great game.
Nice.
That was a really... Yeah, all of them were cinematic as well, so you were actually seeing them big screen, and it was like, you felt you were getting money's worth that day.
And how would you rank the three of them?
Oh, Eyes Wide Shut's the best one. And Ravenous and 13th Warrior I kind of ranked the same, so I love both of them, and they're both flawed, but they're both wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wouldn't rank those two above each other or anything. Our final one just annoying. This will annoy people because it's a remake. It's a notorious remake. It's a Psycho.
Yes.
Because Sod Hitchcock. Now I'm bringing this one up because it is a short remake of Psycho. And the idea of it is proving how much a filmmaker is really important for a film. Because if you remake a film shot by shot, it will never be the same, no matter what you do. And it's an art house film that was released as a mainstream film. It was very misunderstood. And I think it's interesting, even though it doesn't work in many ways, but it can prefigure a lot of Gus Van Sant films from the next decade. We made all these films about loss of identity and things, and this film was about Psycho, the tropes of Psycho put in the modern world, and how Norman Bates suddenly became this everyday weirdo character that you see around you all the time. So actually a lot more depth than people thought, but it's kind of interesting and weird, but a lot of people don't give any credit. So I'm bringing it up. And we don't like it.
It's the only version of Psycho I have in my collection.
I know. And I'm happy to defend it. I've done a video on defend it. I'll still bring it up when I can. I'm happy to be the one lone defender of Psycho.
I mean, not to turn it into the Christopher Walken show, but I would add Communion, which again probably isn't a horror film. It's about alien abduction, but it is really creepy and odd. Obviously buoyed by a creepy and odd central performance by Christopher Walken. I think that was about 1992.
Yeah. It's a very... I haven't seen that one, actually. I'm confused with something else.
There's a couple of really disturbing scenes.
It's very hard to hold off. I think that's what I'm going to say there.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it because it was very hard to. Never came to a video shop. I don't think so. It was just one of those ones that was just.
It's well
It's one
worth
of those
checking
ones.
out, even though I'm biased.
Yeah, you're a bit biased with this so often. So this is the end of a very long video, longer than we thought it was going to be. Because I think we're pushing an hour 45 at the moment,
Yes.
or maybe an hour 40. But it's quite a long video for horror movies. We're hoping you sat through it all. We hope you enjoyed it. We will be doing Bergman next again, so why we're going classy next time.
Yes. I like to mix it up.
Yeah. But we also have a director's series coming soon, which I need to watch the films though, because I've been lazy.
So
But no, but you've been watching some of them.
I've watched some of them. Yeah.
I've never watched
I've
any
still
so
got
far.
a few to watch though.
Yeah. I've got a lot to watch. I've got well, in my defense, I've been watching lots of Japanese movies.
Yes.
So
That's always a good defense.
yeah. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you later.
All right.